Happy 20 years of X-Men. I hope you guys are ready to enjoy this review. I finally dressed the occasion since we're talking X-Men this time, but this time we're talking X2. This is what was a great first movie, has now been a great second movie, and is like a staple in what X-Men movies should be like. So without further ado, cue that intro. X2. So X-Men 2 takes place not too long after the first movie, and what happens is we see that the president gets attacked by this blue mutant who happens to have the coolest tail and the coolest X-Men name ever, who unfortunately is only seen in this movie and not the next one, which is kind of a bummer. The story mostly revolves around this guy named William Stryker, who kind of has some bitterness toward the not just the X-Men and Professor X, but all mutants, period, where he wants to eliminate the threat. Typical kind of like X-Men story. What this movie does so well is that it captures the essence of what an X-Men comic book really is. Pick up an X-Men comic book and check out how many times the X-Mansion is either destroyed, is attacked, I mean, you name it. Something is always happening. That place is always under construction for something. But what's really cool about this one is that none of the other X-Men movies actually really go through something like this, because this was done so well. There was this attack on the X-Mansion, and all the mutants that are involved in the scene where this ambush is happening is pretty amazing. What's done so well about this scene is the fact that we see our first introduction to Colossus, we see our second introduction to Shadowcat, and then we also see Pyro as more of a staple in this universe. But it's kind of funny because in the comic books, he's not actually a student of Xavier. He's actually with Magneto, and I want to say he's like first incarnation. Wolverine shines just like he always does with every other movie. Cyclops has like one or two cool scenes, and then he's pretty much gone for the rest of the movie. There's some pretty cool stuff that happens with Jean Grey. There's cool stuff with Storm, and we also see a couple little cool scenes with different little X-Men here and there. But the two standouts of this entire movie have to be Wolverine and Nightcrawler. The scene that I had mentioned already about him attacking the president was probably one of the best scenes of the movie, and every other scene that has Wolverine in it. I really like how the good guys and the bad guys came together to take down a common enemy. It's pulled straight out of the comic books, because they do this all the time, where the good guys are always in alliance with the bad guys, and it's like they're both coming down to take down this bigger bad guy. I mean, we've had Apocalypse, we've had Onslaught, there's, oh my goodness, so many other major characters in the X-Men universe that some were done really well and some were not done very well at all. And as we move on through these movie reviews, we'll talk more about a little bit of those characters. But as for the character William Stryker, it was interesting to see him be more of a avid character of the Weapon X project that Wolverine originally gets his adamantium from. We get to see a little bit more into Logan's lore as far as how he got it, where it happened, and stuff like that. It really does a good job of us cramming that story in, but making it not so congested, if that makes any sense. It was clear, this is what happened, this is who did it, this is who was involved, and we got as much as we could at that time. Something that a lot of people don't really know is that Wolverine didn't have that much of an origin story back in the day. Up until the early 2000s, I want to say it was called the Origin series, where Wolverine got an official origin story. Because most of your comic book characters have their, like, you know, beginning. Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider, or I'm sorry, Peter Parker was, and then the Hulk was shot with gamma radiation, and then we have Tony Stark, who was this billionaire, or genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, and then we also have Captain America, who was just some kid from Brooklyn. But they all have cohesive origin stories. Whereas Wolverine didn't really have that, because Wolverine didn't even have his own comic book at his first interpretation. His first appearance was actually in a Hulk comic book, and I'll leave a picture of it right up here, but that's where a lot of people wanted to know more about him. He wasn't introduced like a traditional character. He was introduced as just some side superhero, and he wound up getting a really big following, and now he's one of the biggest Marvel characters to date. Anyway, I digress. Back to the movie. We did get little snippets of his origin story, a little bit here and there, but this is where he gets a little bit more of the Weapon X project, where he gets the adamantium onto his bones and becomes indestructible, and we get a little bit of stuff on that, but it doesn't go into full detail. We'll get a little bit more into that when we get to a certain specific movie that I hate to even say that exists, but it does. Anyway, I can keep going on about this movie. This movie is so good. If you haven't watched it, please check it out. If you have watched it, go back and watch it. It holds up to today, and I think that's something that's really, really fun about that particular movie, was that it wasn't at the height of you know, the greatest CGI at the time, but it didn't really need it. It had such a good story. It had such a good a plot. It was one of those movies that didn't suffer from this thing called sequelitis. I'll leave a little something right here so you guys can see what the actual definition for it is. But basically what it generally means is that you have a first movie and then you have a sequel. The first movie usually does really well, and then the second movie kind of just... And I'm glad to know that this movie didn't suffer from that. It's actually I want to say it's the 4th highest grossing X-Men movie of all time. That is until we have our MCU version of these characters, which I have no doubt are going to be less than incredible. But again, if you haven't checked out this movie in a good while, turn it on, check it out. I know they just recently started adding some of the movies to Disney+. So if you have Disney+, you're kind of in luck. If not, I'm sure you can find it on like DVD or something at like Walmart, Target, or wherever your stores are at. Thank you guys for sticking around all the way to the end. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep yourself updated on any movie reviews, reactions, video game reviews, and unboxings. And also be sure to follow on Facebook and on Instagram. And as always, everybody, be sure to wash your hands, brush your teeth, be safe out there during this COVID-19 stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next video.